So my name is Josiah. I work as an IT project manager, currently based in Leeds. However, I bought a home here in Middlesbrough. And I'm 26, turning 27 in June, for those that care to know, and that's me. So I actually used to watch a lot of YouTube videos just before I bought property, so I wanted to actually learn, in terms of what the inner workings are, who you need to speak to, what the interest rates are. So in terms of where I learned about Donna McCarthy, I actually learned obviously about them on YouTube, watching videos of Nikki. The main reason why I chose Donna McCarthy was mainly because I felt like the information which was being provided by Nikki was quite straightforward and understandable. And for me as a first-time buyer, it meant I could actually relate to the information that was being provided. And I hoped that that would translate to my whole process when I actually had someone to deal with. In my case, I had someone called Robin. He did a great job in terms of just giving me the full knowledge that I needed to know, gaps in my knowledge. And obviously, just as a first-time buyer, you tend to have a lot of queries, and ultimately he was able to answer all my questions. What were my biggest challenges? I think for me personally, it was just the fact that I think in terms of watching YouTube videos, you do get a lot of knowledge. However, in between a lot of what's being said, you might still have gaps. And if you're someone like me, you might not want to go through the process of maybe writing a comment on a YouTube video, for example, or maybe you just actually want to speak to someone. And that's basically the type of person I am. I would rather actually hear, vocally, speaking to someone one-on-one and saying, right, why is this like that? Or, whatever the query might be. And ultimately, that was one of the key challenges that I was able to overcome by actually speaking to Robin. And, through the series of conversations that we had, it definitely helped massively in terms of just giving me confidence that he knew what I was talking about. Obviously, he's got years of experience, but then also just making me at ease, ultimately, as a first-time buyer. I actually bought the property through auction, working with Donna McCarthy. So I had just over a month period to actually get it all sorted. The property was initially listed at £60,000. I submitted initial offer of £58,000, which was rejected. Now, shortly after, the seller did actually put it up for auction, which started at £52,000, which I think they were hopefully looking to get something significant over 60. Now, before the auction commenced, I decided to put in a pre-offer of £62,000, which was fortunately accepted. And from there was pretty much a race against time. I had about 28 days or so to basically commence, to basically complete. I needed to move very fast, working with solicitor. So in terms of information that I didn't know, or maybe I was enlightened on, I would definitely say Robin definitely gave me a bit of insight into interest rates and some of the sort of variables that sort of the bank would take into considerations as part of maybe what they might offer you, and in terms of what's also on the table. So that definitely helped. As well as that, in terms of my solicitors, he actually obviously gave his own personal advice on clients that he knew and so forth. So that was able to also help me to know what was on the market or who I needed to actually use. So it was more of a, there's this option or there's that option, and obviously it was up to me to ultimately decide who I wanted to go with, and that's exactly how we're able to sort of marry the two together. So what drew me to Middlesbrough was mainly because of the price of the properties in itself. I also bought in a sort of area whereby I knew that I would be able to potentially get lodges in as well. So obviously there's a rent a room scheme which the government obviously has. Therefore, if I'm obviously living in one of the rooms, I'm able to rent out maybe one or two of the other rooms that are available within my property. So that was something that I wanted to explore. Now, with that being said, I could have bought property in other areas that weren't necessarily as cheap as Middlesbrough, possibly Leeds, Manchester and so forth, as they're obviously within my affordability. However, I wanted to go with something that would ease me into the sort of property ladder, and this was a good starting point for me. In terms of the actual property, beforehand I actually didn't get any surveyors having to look at the property whatsoever, which obviously I'd say is a first time buyer I probably would recommend. I didn't do it myself, so I might sound like a bit of a hypocrite, but I think it's probably one to actually just take on, just as a means of covering yourself ultimately. At the end of the day, buying a property is a huge investment, regardless of however much you put down for a deposit, that's still something that's coming out of your pocket. The main thing I really like about this property, there's quite a few things. So obviously I bought it as a 2-bedroom officially. Now, there is a sort of separate lounge area, you could say, which I've obviously converted into a bedroom. Now, for me, that obviously means if I do have lodgers in the property, I'm able to rent out a second room, basically. So for me, that's a huge con. As well as that, I do quite like the high ceilings that I've got in here. So it's definitely an attractive part of this entire property. I think my experience with Dun & Mackay was very pleasant. So for me, I would most definitely be considering, to actually recommend them for others. Now, the fact that we're based down south, I think I definitely did have a bit of doubts initially, if I'm being honest. But it turns out it wasn't necessarily an issue, especially because my property is based up north in Middlesbrough. So the experience has been quite pleasant and I've had no issues. So most definitely, I will be recommending.